As we approach Rosh Hashana, we need to get oriented and focused. What exactly is Rosh Hashana? Actually, there are many Rosh Hashanahs. Rosh Hashanah means the start, the anniversary, the beginning, being refreshed. So we could say correctly that Pesach is the Rosh Hashanah of our freedom from slavery. Shavuos is the Rosh Hashanah for our receiving the Torah. So Rosh Hashanah itself is the Rosh Hashanah of what? Of course, of creation. But that's not very meaningful. What about creation? Right? So we find that the theme of Rosh Hashanah is the coronation, when we coronate God as the King of the world. Over and over again, the word HaMelech is like the central theme of Rosh Hashanah. So Rosh Hashanah is not about repentance, and it's not about asking for forgiveness for sin. That's Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah is the devotion and the dedication that we pledge to God so that He will enjoy being our King for another year. So it's a coronation, and it is the Rosh Hashanah, it is the origin and the source of all of God's royalty, of God's being our King for the rest of the year. What does it mean that God is our King? A king is someone who attends to the physical, financial, and security needs of his country, of the people in the country. A king can be thought of as a great compliment, king of kings, royalty, and so on. Or it can be seen as a menial task. You got to see to the roads, to the infrastructure. You got to make sure that bridges don't collapse if you're a good king. You got to make sure that the people have what to eat. You have to make sure that the borders are secure and people can live in safety. It's a miserable job, but somebody's got to do it. So when we talk about God being king, we're not praising God. We're not glorifying Him by saying He's a king. We're marveling at God's humility, that He would actually lower Himself to attend to our mundane needs, like a king. So when we ask God to be our king, we're not asking Him to be greater, higher, loftier, removed, aloof. On the contrary, we're asking Him to get involved in things that are beneath His dignity, really. And He wants to. But we can determine whether His attending to our needs is going to be a pleasure for Him or just a task that He has to do. What does it take to make God being a king for us more of a pleasure? If we recognize it, if we invite Him into those parts of our lives which we don't ordinarily think of being connected to Him. So for example, we compartmentalize. There's an occasion where we talk about God, think about God, do something for God. Those are occasions. It's a holiday, it's a holy day, Rosh Hashana. Go hear the blowing of the shofar. Yom Kippur, everybody shows up in shul. If you're going to do Yisker, okay, now we got to go to shul. It's a religious occasion. For a religious occasion, you need to think about God, and you're conscious of God. Because, without God, I wouldn't be doing this. Without God, I wouldn't be going to the synagogue on Yom Kippur. We even recognize that in our mundane lives, our health, for example, of course God has to give us health. Because if He's not taking care, not much else can help. Particularly when we get desperate, God forbid, See? As soon as we're desperate, God comes into the picture. Now it's God forbid. So we have God invited into our lives up to a degree. When we're desperate, yes, we think about God. When there's a holy occasion, a religious occasion, of course we think about God. But the rest of our lives, like I work for a living, I have a job, I do my job, I do it well, I get paid, it's good. I don't associate that with God. Again, unless there's a crisis. So by coronating God and making him our king, what we're actually doing is we're inviting God into those parts of our lives that we usually assume have nothing to do with him. And we exclude him from that part of our lives. Like not having prayer in public schools. God doesn't belong there. This is the public. In our relationships, in our friendships, what has God got to do with it? God is not part of that. In our eating, in our dressing, in our vacationing, God doesn't play any part of that. So he may be our God, but he's not our king. Rosh Hashana is the occasion in which we invite God into those parts of our lives that are so mundane that we don't think God would lower himself into these things. But he does. He wants to be our king. And so he creates Rosh Hashanah. And he says, please, coronate me. I want to be your king, but I can't if you don't invite me. A king has to be accepted willingly. A king is not a dictator. So this is the theme of Rosh Hashanah. In the coming year, God will be evident in every part of my life. God will be present in every part of my life because he's not just the creator, he is also the king. And then every part of my life becomes meaningful, becomes an occasion for sober thought of purpose, of meaningfulness, of mindfulness. Everything is elevated when you bring God as king into your life. And that's what we mean when we say, Avinu Malkeinu, Ein Lanu Melech Ela Ota. We have no king other than you. Now that may be a statement of fact. Yeah, we have no. I looked around for another king, I couldn't find one. So, you're the only king. That's not what we mean. When we say we have no other king than you, we're saying we want no other king. We don't want our health, our success, our well-being, our sanity, our good moods. We don't want them to come from any place else other than from you. And a really powerful example would be a husband isn't making a living. He's having a hard time. He can't pay his bills. So a stranger comes over to the wife and says, I see that your husband is having a hard time paying for your bills. I'll pay your bills. A little creepy? What are you doing paying my bills? I don't want you to pay my bills. If it's not from my husband, I'm not interested, because I have only one husband. Ein lanu melech ela ota. We have only one king. I don't want my success or my well-being to come from any place other than from my king, from my Father in heaven. That's Rosh Hashanah. Have a meaningful new year.